candidate that your party is extending support to, General Mahesh Senanayake, was also in the north in the past, over the weekend in fact. So why this attention towards the north, and are you all giving attention to the north only when it comes to an election?
Not really. Ours is a new movement basically, and I think we have come forward basically due to the common demand, you know, because 71 years of misrule has eventually come to a stage where people totally reject, they say, all the 225. In my view, the Northeast also is one part of the whole country, the entire country. Actually, to a great extent, the youth in the North, you know, we went through a terrible war which lasted about 30 years. In our view, we feel they were also badly neglected, and that's why they had taken up arms, like our own, you know, youth in the South, where on 2 instances, right, they had taken up arms. Actually, we have understood that the whole problem is all due to mismanagement and all the injustices they had caused, because they have really not been able to address the main issues concerning the people. When it comes to a situation after having ended a war, I won't use the word winning the war. I always want to be cautious, because the war was itself a creation by these crooked politicians. They have eventually, over a long period of time, created situations where, you know, in the South, I must say, they took up arms thinking that they'll be able to run governance better. And probably it must be the same thing that even the youth in the North also had, because they have proved. Now, in 70s, you know very well, Mrs. Irma Bandaranaike, it's a good thing to start that way, started, you know, stopped importing red onions. That was where the farmers there were so jubilant. Unfortunately, that's the same issue when it comes to even the South. The farmer had been neglected. Large number of our population are farmers, starting from the farmers up to even the top civil servant or whoever. They had a hard time. It is all because the country went through a very bad period, all due to corruption. Let me say it this way. Now, what happened? In 1978, we changed the whole system and embraced an open economy. Having opened up the economy, we have even shut down every single industry we had. Now we are a country dependent for everything, even food stuff, maybe even the pin, everything, the pencil, everything is being imported.
Yes.
I know even the North, red onions, bee onions, they're produced in large quantities. Today, a kilo of bee onion is 200 rupees. I believe if you could have given all that to the farmers there in the North, you know, we will not be wasting all our foreign resources. It could all be used for the benefit of the farmers here. We have addressed all those issues. My biggest worry right now, as a country, we will give priority to all the areas, maybe in the North, maybe the South, and our candidate have extensively traveled the North and the East. We have received very much, you know, unexpected welcome, and we are happy. The entire country, you asked me what our plans are to give a new lease of life for the country.
Thank you, Mr. De Silva, for the opening remarks. I want to very quickly move on to Dr. Nihal Abesinghe, Secretary of the National People's Power Movement. Of course, you are supporting Anura Kumara Dissanayake as the presidential candidate. Again, we want to focus the attention on the northern province in our opening round. The gentlemen that are seated on either side of you have they're all representing a certain presidential candidate, and those presidential candidates are again having a very high level of focus on the northern province, and especially the gentleman seated on right next to you, the United National Party presidential candidate, is also heavily dependent on the votes that are coming in from the north, is what political analysts say at the moment. So I want to ask you this question. You've seen what has been happening in our country. You've been with a presidential candidate who also have had to face certain issues in the past with regard to uprisings. Do you think that the issue pertaining to the youth being neglected in the north can be controlled or mitigated or given a solution to through your presidential candidate?
Certainly, right. We fully understand what has happened in the past, and whether it is in the north or whether it is in the south. No, we have not been, as Sri Lankans, we have not been able to solve many issues that the people are facing. Same as the youth. I mean, youth, whether they are in north and east or whether they are in the south, the issues are same. But after the ending of the war, that we really see that the issues that which are prevailing in the north, that the successive governments, whether it is the 2000 before 2015 or after 2015, the governments fail to attend their issues. So I think we need to look at them very sympathetically, because we need to solve their problems as Sri Lankans. So therefore, that we believe as a party, the National People's Power. Our candidate is Kumara Disanayaka. It's a coalition of 30 organizations. So we are looking for the support from the north and east, and we have had a couple of meetings with Kumara Disanayaka attending this meeting in the north as well as in the east. So we do get support. We see that we are getting support. So basically, we are for solving their problems, and we understand that they have a land issue. That during the war period, their lands have been taken by the government, and for its purpose, we really know the purpose. So they have the land issue, and then they have the issue of political prisoners, as well as economical issues that they are facing. So if we take the our household income, we know that the richest 20% enjoy more than half of the total household income, and the poorest 20% get only 5%. So and we believe, we know that Mullaitivu, Kilinochchi, Betiklo are the poorest districts in the country, and then economically they are very poor. So in that sense, we do believe that north and east, compared to the south, most of the south districts compared to the western province of the country, so they do have a problem of poverty. So we need to support them. So we are working with them, and we are really moving to both to the east and the north, really to work with them and understand their issues and learn more about them. And certainly we will be fighting for them, their problems. Whether, it doesn't matter to us whether the problems are in the south or east. We believe that we Sri Lankans, we are looking for a national unity, and for that purpose, we will be really fighting for their issues. So we believe that they do have issues that we need to support.
Thank you, Dr. Abesing, for your opening remarks. I want to now move on to Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon. You are representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. We have the former president's son, parliamentarian Namal Rajapaksa, engaging in campaign activities in the northern province. An argument that one could raise is that you don't probably want Namal Rajapaksa on the political stages in the other provinces, so you have sent him to the north. But what is the real reason for having a person dedicated for the province? How significant is it for him to be there? And what do you think is the plan of presidential candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa having Namal Rajapaksa campaigning?
Well, at the beginning itself, I must admit that, I am not nobody in the organizational campaign role of the SLPP. As a member of the SLFP and a member of the UPFA group, we have pledged our support to the SLPP candidate, and then to that extent we are extending our fullest cooperation and working for them. So with regard to the organizational pattern in which they have involved various parties, various people in various districts and areas, is a matter that they have decided. I am unable to pass any comments on those matters. But with regard to this Tamil issue, which we have been focusing from the beginning, I like to say this. In this election, there's very much attention focused about the participation of the North and East Tamil parties in the election process. And today, if you read the papers, they are very much, the whole issue is very much in news. They're talking about one or two Tamil parties representing the Tamil-speaking people predominantly, pledging their support to the UNP candidate openly. That's what they say. Whereas the UNP leader, on the other hand, is saying, no, we have not asked for any support, or we have not sought their pledges by giving them any reciprocation of accepting their demands or whatever. I mean, that is very much in the news. So this is a very strange state of affairs. Nobody asked whether they have consented or agreed to their conditions, but we knew that the Tamil parties were putting forward some demands which were communal based, which were sort of separatist based, and which were sort of not in keeping with the other thinking of the other political parties in this country. They are virtually confined to those areas and basically sounding very communal. But in that context, for the UNP to come up and say, no, we did not agree to give our consent to any of the pledges that, conditions that they are putting or asking, demands that they have placed. I mean, it's very strange. But on the other hand, for the Tamil parties as well, we notice a very serious thing in this. Now, TNA, which is the constituent important grouping of the Tamil parties in the north, comprising of 4-5 different parties. Now, it is not the TNA that has pledged the support. It is only ITK or ITAC and another party that has pledged the support. And Mr. Sumantiram has spoken on their behalf and said that they are pledging the support. So, I mean, the question arises whether there is a division among the Tamil parties itself about this giving of support to UNP. So, that question arises ipso facto, because we expected the TNA to respond as a grouping, which they did in the presidential election and various other elections preceding. But this time it boils down to a separation among themselves, and there seems to be a big difference in opinions among the Tamil parties in the north about the support that they should give to the presidential candidate.
Thank you, Mr. Tennakon. Finally, Mr. Jayakodi, Rasika Jayakodi, who's a political commentator, again, thank you for being here with us. You've heard three gentlemen speak about their respective presidential candidates. Of course, I should mention that Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon is a member of the Colombo Municipal Council representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party as well. Mr. Jayakodi, very interestingly, you have to focus your attention on the north, because every time there has been an issue pertaining to the Tamil community in Sri Lanka, it has been during a UNP government in the past. So again, we are looking at a presidential candidate. After 25 years, we have a UNP presidential candidate this time running for the presidency as well. Now, with all of these in mind, how important is it for the Tamil vote for UNP and New Democratic Front presidential candidate, Sajith Premadas?
It's very important, Chaturanga, because when you look at the northern province, you're talking about 850,000 votes, registered votes in the province. And at the last presidential election, the candidate backed by the UNP won about 75% of the registered votes, and which is an overwhelming number. So this time also we are looking at an even better victory. Now, Mr. Tennakon's explanation alone explains why the SLPP, or the group backed by Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, fails to draw the support of the Tamil community, because they are highly skeptical of the aspirations of these people. They are highly skeptical of the aspirations of these of the representatives engaging in politics on behalf of the people in the northern province. Now, this time, before the election, everyone talked about 13 conditions presented by Tamil political parties and whether these presidential candidates would agree to those conditions. Now, while pledging support to the UNP-backed NDF candidate, Mr. Sajith Premadasa, Mr. Sumandiran clearly stated that their decision had no bearing on the 13 conditions put forward by the Tamil political parties. They said they made the decision solely based on the manifesto presented by the United National Party and the New Democratic Front. They said these conditions were not even discussed with Mr. Premadasa or Mr. Wickramasinghe. So that was very clear, that was crystal clear. But still, the SLPP is skeptical of this move. So which is why because they lack empathy. That's the fundamental issue here. Now, when you look at the northern province, there are multiple issues, ranging from debt to unemployment and land issues, missing persons. More than anything, they need normalcy in their lives. That's the main aspiration of the people. The UNP is willing to bring that to the table. UNP has, especially the youth, the rural youth in the northern province, they need opportunities to move forward. And the UNP has presented this youth charter. And this youth charter will be signed into law within 3 months after Mr. Premadasa becoming the president. So it's not a mere election promise. This is a valid document, and that's why they are able to count on the UNP candidate, NDF candidate.
The youth charter produced by NDF candidate Sajith Premadasa was unveiled recently. We are going to talk about that and other factors that are mentioned in the manifestos as well. This is where the interesting bit begins. We have questions from the journalists, so I'm going to introduce the two journalists with us here today. We have Mr. Deshan Gonavala. Thank you, Deshan, for being here. And of course, Mr. Shehan Ranatunga, who are both from the Newsfirst newsroom, from the English desk, who have been on the show. Deshan and Shehan, all the four gentlemen have expressed their views with regard to their candidate and their plans with regard to the North and the East. I want you all to focus the attentions on matters like the manifesto as well, so that we can get a clear understanding of where this is coming from. As the first question, please permit me to ask the first question and go to Mr. De Silva once again. Mr. De Silva, we had General Mahesh Senanayake on the show last week. He explained very extensively about several plans that he has in place, and one salient factor that he mentioned was that he's going to make Sarath Fonseca the Minister of Defence. Now, we wanted to ask him whether the parties that are supporting him, including your party that you represent, you have very senior state sector employees, retired state sector employees working for him at the moment, like the former Auditor General. What if you guys decide to support either Sajith Premadasa or Gotabaya Rajapaksa or Andra Kumar Dissanayake? Then what happens?
In our case, we will have to stand alone. I don't think we will ever go and just support anyone else, because the country is basically at crossroads. I would say it that way. It is therefore very important that we have definitely come up with a mandate, in the sense manifesto. We have clearly stated what our plans are going to be. Unfortunate situation is there are all types of stories spreading, and probably they are doing all that for various reasons. It doesn't matter what they really aim at, but the biggest problem right now, I personally think, we have a group of people who have been carefully chosen, and all of us are very careful to select, and our doors are open, provided they don't belong to the group of people who have been named for various, illegal acts or whatever. Actually, we want more and more talented people. It doesn't matter, say, provided they had been serving in other political parties. It doesn't matter. But if they have not tarnished their names, that is what is basically important. We really want to unite whoever who comes forward, because we have to think in terms of the future, in the sense we need good parliamentarians, we need good provincial councillors. Similarly, even at the local level, all the parties who have reigned this country for the last 70 odd years, especially after 1978, 77, this whole system had been destroyed with having opened the doors wide open for people who are thoroughly incompetent to run even local councils, We do not propose to encourage the system that had been established so far in the country. It is therefore extremely important. We will have to change the whole thing and introduce new standards, all that. My biggest concern is this. With all the challenges we are facing in the country, you ask me, say about Sarath Fonseca or whoever, right? Actually, if they are competent, we don't mind opening doors.
But then, Mr. De Silva, of course, NDF presidential candidate Sajith Premadasa has also said Sarath Fonseca is the defence minister. He has also said that, or in fact, the Prime Minister himself has said that he will continue under the NDF President Sajith Premadasa. If General Mahesh Seranayake comes in, at least until the general election, it's going to be Ranil Wickremesinghe as the Prime Minister and Sarath Fonseca, as he said last week, as the Defence Minister. Why should someone vote for you and not vote for Sajith Premadasa?
I would say this way, they will have to weigh the pros and cons, I mean, there are situations because certain groups of people carry heavy baggages, right? Let me put it that way. So naturally, it is always good to be cautious not to elect the wrong type of personnel. The biggest problem had been our political culture. It's a case where they have only looked after themselves. Self-seeking, utterly inefficient, utterly corrupt, say totally neglected. Now, I brought the constitution in case if there are issues, Now, I like to say, now, directive principles of state policy and fundamental duties, all that is stated here in this constitution, right? Unfortunate situation is none of these things have been honored. So basic requirement here, we will have to give or at least consider who will definitely abide by the laws, the rules, and honor practices, all that here in the country, so that we need a democratic country at the same time who will respect laws so that we will be able to take the country forward under similar circumstances. Because if there is no law and order, if there is no democracy, I personally believe that has been our unfortunate situation. We want to get rid of all that and take the country forward with people who are really ethically and morally sound.
Gentlemen?
Dr. Nihal, I want to pose this question because, see, all these parties, to be honest, barring General Mahesh Senanayake's campaign, the main two campaigns, that's the NDF led by the United National Party and the Sri Lanka Podu Jana Peramuna alliance now, both of these parties have strategies to tackle the North. You saw, I think, 14 parties signing on further with Gotabaya Rajapaksa today. In addition, they have the TMVP, a few parties supporting them. We saw the Ilangai Tamil Arsakachi support or pledge their support to Sajith Premadasa. What is the National People's Power's strategy to target these Tamil voters, to target these communities in the north and the east? And is it even a realistic proposition to say that one can become the president without a strategy to do so?
See, we are starting from with our recent campaigning. So I mean, for us, whether we are getting the votes from the north or south, it doesn't matter. I mean, we have to build up our campaign, and we have to we are basically starting with about 6 to 7 lakhs votes, which the JVP has accumulated all the years. So based on that, so we are working on our strategies to get the support from the people from this, whether it is from the south or east. So it's from this 21 plus million population that we have to
absolutely. I don't disagree with that, but what is your strategy for the north and the east? Do you all have an organizational network? Have you all formed an alliance or entered an agreement with any parties that are actively involved in politics there?
No, we don't have any direct discussion so far with any of the parties in the north, but we do have organizations, civil organizations working with, and we do our, our work.
What are the organizations working with the NPP in the north?
Pardon?
What are the organizations, one or two organizations working with the NPP in the north?
Actually, it's not in the north, but in the east.
Okay,
we do have social development movement, that's a civil organization working with us, and we haven't yet signed any MOU, but we have had discussions.
Right.
And they are supporting, and they are now working with us even in the south.
Is there enough time? We have, I think, today is the 4th of November.
Yes.
The 13th of November is the deadline, I think, to end canvassing activities. You play a key part in the NPP and the electoral process within the NPP. And you mentioned that you're having discussions. With less than about 9 days to go of canvassing, when are you going to see... why I ask you this is because, like Rasika said earlier, it is impractical to remotely think that any party can receive or can win the election without an organizational structure within the north and the east, which is also a part, which is also a constituent of this country. Without that plan, can the NPP look at winning, or are they looking at winning at all?
We do want to win, but we believe the people will change, and then they will think of our policies and strategies, and we really want them to vote for us based on our policies and strategies. We are for a change. We just do not want to change the government, right? We will continue to work with people, and then we will build up. Okay, maybe that we may not be going to win in this election, but it doesn't matter. We are for a change. We will continue to work with people, and when the parliamentary election comes, there will be an opportunity, and we really should be able to get more votes.
If people want to change, why shouldn't they vote for Mr. De Silva's movement?
Change for what?
If people want to change
like
for
what?
Like you mentioned.
Yes.
You're not just looking at it.
No, we are not really want to change from this government to the next government to continue same principles.
Absolutely.
Right.
That is why I'm asking you. If the average person wants a change, why don't they vote for Mr. De Silva's party, which idolizes not a person but a set
the alternative.
Yeah, which idolizes not a person but a set of principles and a different way of doing things. Why should they go back to the Janata Vimukti Peramuna-led NPP?
I mean, it's up to people. I mean, we don't mind anybody voting to anyone. So it doesn't matter to us. We are going by set of policies and strategies.
Yeah.
We are discussing with people. We try to change the pattern that they have been voting, and we try to convince them that we are for a change with set of policies. Actually, we haven't put forward any policy only for this election.
Right.
Right? Our policies are for developing this country.
Right.
So we are a group of intellectuals in the NPP as a national intellectual organization. So we have been watching what was happening in this country for for me it's about 40-50 years.
Right.
So we learn from what is going on,
right.
and we have put forward policies and strategies to develop this country. So whether any other party take our policies or strategies, it doesn't matter to us.
Right.
Right? We will be for a change. We will try to keep on convincing people to change. So once, if let this election, we face this election, we will see the results. So from whatever the results, we will work on it, and then we will continue to convince people. And it's not me or somebody else winning. Right? It's the country should, it is the country which should win.
Right.
The people of this country should win.
Right.
So we will be working for that rather than.
Right. Mr. Rasika Jayakodi, see, I want to bring to your attention something Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon mentioned a bit earlier, and before I come to Mr. Tennakon, I thought I'd ask you something. Before we go into the north, so your opinion, you are a strong advocate for the United National Front-led alliance at the moment. You think the president should be on the 17th of November?
Sorry?
Who do you think the president should be
Obviously, Mr. Sajid Premadasa.
And you're in support of the fact that Minister Sarath Fonseca would make a good defense minister as well?
Of course, he's the
Right.
most experienced
Who do you think
person.
would make a good prime minister?
Person who commands the majority support in
Who
parliament.
do you think would make a good prime minister?
In my case, I go by the constitution, and I speak on behalf of the constitution. That's all. That's the document that I abide by.
Yeah.
Based on what's there in the constitution, the person who commands the majority support in parliament, if you take Mr. Violendran from the TNA, commands the majority support in parliament, he should be made the prime minister, and I support that because he's the person with the majority, and that's what we advocated during the 52-day political crisis. So
Correct.
same thing applies here.
Correct.
The
So,
person who commands the majority in parliament. That's all.
right. I want to ask you a few more questions pertaining to something that.
Nishan, I also have to remind you that Shehan is eagerly waiting on the other side.
Yes. I'm going to hand it over to Shehan.
Pounce on his opportunity.
What I also want to ask you is, see, I understand that TNA MP Sumandiran came and stated that he is not, that they have not agreed to any conditions. And we have no written agreement here as journalists to present. So we can't be here and say, no, there was a secret agreement either. Am I right, Chaturanga?
Absolutely.
So what I want to ask you is, on a matter of principle, and you've been part of the Young Professionals Organization at the United National Party also, the TNA, that set of principles put forward, this has been actually signed by Mr. Mave Senadiraja as well. Some of these proposals, giving preference to locals when it comes to jobs, things like that. We're a country that takes pride in our diversity. We take pride in the fact that a kid can come from Jaffna and work in Vellavatta, and that, Sinhala, Burger, and Muslim people can go, to Little India in Vellavatta, enjoy some good food from that region, and go up towards the heart of Colombo, enjoy good biryani. Why is it that these kind of things are being brought up? And is there any possibility that these kind of principles, to a certain degree at least, could have been agreed for the mere purpose of getting political support at an election?
No, I think the best answer was given by all presidential candidates, including Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. None of them agreed to. They weren't even willing to discuss these conditions. So I think that's the best answer because the biggest issue concerning the northern province is social exclusion.
Right.
Now, those people, especially the youth, decisions are made above their heads and they are not really part of the decision-making process of the country. And that's where a lot of issues concerning them stem from. So the core objective of a political campaign should be to address those core issues. Now, the UNP, for instance, has proposed a system in the manifesto where we establish youth councils at divisional secretariat levels across the country, working very closely with Parliament and all its committees.
Correct.
So, on national issues such as education, employment, and other related problems, their views will be taken into consideration when shaping the national policies.
Why I ask you this, Mr. Chayakodi, is because of the fact that Mr. Sumandiran, for example, has been notorious even when it comes to the Human Rights Council issue. Very often, people representing that particular party, the ITAK, have spoken against Sri Lanka when it came to the Human Rights Council resolution as well. Why is it that, like you said, they have put aside their conditions in coming and supporting Mr. Premadasa? If conditions were presented or conditions were endorsed, why is it that suddenly they are saying, oh, we don't want it anymore since nobody's accepting it, so now we are going to support this guy?
I think it's a moment of truth for them.
Too suspicious?
No, I think it's a moment of truth. They realize I mean, we all have to come to the assumption that they tried to sort of seek political mileage from highly polarized election campaign in Sri Lanka. So they probably tried to whip up certain sentiments, on the part of the Tamil community. But then they realized that none of the candidates were ready to accept their proposal. They weren't even ready to negotiate their proposal. So in that context, there's no point in keep talking about it. They decided to move on and assess the manifestos presented by various candidates and support the manifesto, presented the most acceptable manifesto out of the lot. So I think that's where it stands right now.
Mr. Tennakoon, I want to draw a question to you now. You've heard what Mr. Jayakodi had to say, And you also heard Dr. Abhay Singh also speaking about that specific question that I'm trying to get out of all of your North. Now, you have an interesting point of view with regard to the northern province and the social exclusion that Rasika touched upon right now. I want to ask you this question now. I touched upon this in the first round as well. Every time that there has been a communal injustice towards the Tamil populace of our country, it has coincidentally been during the time of a United National Party government, be it the Premadasa time, be it the Jaya Jayawardhan time, be it even after, during the 30-year war itself. This issue is a salient factor that stands out. Why has it always been the United National Party during all of these communal injustices towards the Tamils?
It's a fact, I should say, because this is what we see when we look back to the history. This is what we observe. No one can give reasonings for that, but that has happened. Now take, for example, the market economy that was introduced in 1977 had a very serious effect on the economic patterns that were prevailing in the Jaffna northern region, northern and eastern regions, with regard to their economic activities. See, the production economy that they were used to, the agricultural production economy, was completely affected and changed due to the market economy introduction that came as a bombshell on them, because they got completely disrupted. So that was the first instance where they got affected economically due to the UNP economic policies. Then this manifested in a very distinct form in 1981. 1981 marked the watershed of a 4-year rule. After a 4-year rule of the UNP government, they wanted to try out the first elections, DDC elections in Jaffna, in the entire country. And the candidate put forward by the UNP to lead the DDC group, Mr. Tyagaraja, was shot dead by unknown gunmen from Jaffna. And on 31st of May 1981, when they were holding the first election meeting near a temple in Jaffna for the DDC election, 2 police constables were shot dead. One was a Sinhalese, one was a Tamil. And a Muslim police constable was also injured seriously. He didn't succumb to the injuries. Now, according to Mr. Amirthalingam, what he stated in Parliament is very relevant to what you said. He very clearly said, in half an hour, lorry loads, jeep loads, and van loads of police constables, police officers arrived at the scene, and they started a ransack in the Jaffna Peninsula, in that area, starting from the temple that was adjoining the DDC meeting. They demolished the temple. Then, not stopping at that, they started burning the shops, burning houses, burning the house of the MP, Mr. Yogeshwaran, in Jaffna. This happened in 1981. For 4 days, this ransack rioting by the police continued up to 4th of June. And on 1st of June, they burned down the library of Jaffna. You know, this was a criminal thing. Nobody in the world, whole world, would condone a thing like that, because that was a treasure of knowledge. That Jaffna library, treasure of knowledge, including starting from Ola leaves to all kinds of literature productions, everything was there, and it was burned down. So this happened in 1981, on the 1st of June 1981, and this went on. And that government, UNP government, never ever even tender an apology to what happened on that day, during that 4 days, that terror. No commission was appointed to look into what has transpired. No compensation was paid to anybody affected. Then what happened? All this happened strangely at a time when 2 senior cabinet ministers of the UNP government were in Jaffna town. These are all facts stated in Parliament. And in Parliament, on the floor of the House, Mr. Gamini Disanayak stated, admitting that it is the police that led that campaign. It is the police that led the campaign to burn the houses, burn the shops, burn the library, and also to burn down the house of Mr. Yogeshwaran.
Mr. Tennakoon,
He
now,
admitted it.
yeah, Mr. Tennakoon, now, while someone can raise that point towards the United National Party government back in the day,
Yeah.
someone can also raise the question and point the finger at the party that you represent, or that your party is now extending support to the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna for causing communal violence in the recent past, where the Alutgama incident happened and where the Muslims are now affected.
I mean-
Isn't that a logical argument? to
I
make?
don't think so. It is not at all relevant. We are referring to the northern situation and the elections, and then we are the support that they are all looking forward to the Tamil votes in the north. So in that context, I would rather confine it to that area.
Right.
In 1982, the first presidential election took place just after 81.
Yes.
What happened? Immediately after the presidential election was held by amending the constitution. They advanced the date of the election. The first amendment of the constitution was brought to advance the date of the election. And they held the election in 1982, whereas they would have gone on till further for another 1.5 years. Now, immediately after the election, what did they do? They imprisoned, took to custody all the activists who played a role against the UNP, against the UNP candidate. And you know the election result in 1982, this is a very good indicator. UNP became a bad third in that election in the Jaffna. The first one was Ponnambalam. He won all the seats except Point Pedro. All the other seats, SLFP was the second SLFP candidate. UNP was a bad third. What did it reflect? It reflected the repugnance that the people had towards the economic policy of the UNP and how they reacted to when things cropped up, and how the state-sponsored terrorism initiated there. So this was one reason why the youth in that area were thoroughly dissatisfied with the Tamil political parties, which were supposed to represent them, because they did not represent their interests. They instead represented, joined hands with the government, and they did various other things. Therefore, they took up to arms. This is the beginning. And what happened in 1983? 1983, the worst ever, the incident that Sri Lanka faced, the riots of the Tamil riots, in the riots, Sinhalese and Tamil riots, in Colombo city started. Under which government? The whole world started looking down upon us as a disgraceful event. Yeah. And what happened? It led to the basis of people running away from this country, seeking refuge in other countries, becoming diaspora members and refugees in other countries. That was the beginning.
Mr. Jayakodi,
can we forget this?
We have to go in for a short commercial break.
I'll give a 30-second reply to this. These things happened, Chaturanga, 40 years ago, 4 decades ago. Fundamental nature of political parties is that they evolve. Now, then, in the same breath, I can talk about what happened in 1958. Tasi Itachi's account of what happened in 1958 during communal rights.
Not a thing like this. Never happened.
Now, the best answer was given by the people in Northern Province during the past 3 national elections, 2010, 2015 and 2019. You can see what
Mr. Tennakoon, we have to let Mr.
No, he talked about the UNP's result in 1982. Yeah. But 2010, 2015, what happened? They won overwhelming majority, resounding majority. 75% of the people voted in favor of the UNP. So they have given the response to this.
Gentlemen, we have to go in for a short commercial break. As our viewers can see, like the presidential candidates' stages, the political stages, our Little Face the Nation set is also heating up. We will be right back after a short commercial break, and this is not a pledge that you have to wait till the 17th of November to see fulfilled. We will be back right after this.
ධර්මිෂ්ඨ සමාජයක් මට මතකයි අපි ප්‍රථමයෙන්ම බැඳුනේ ලෝක බැංකුවට 1951 දී. ඒකේදී මම ගියා මුදල් ඇමතුම හැටියට සම්මේලනයට ගිහිල්ලා ප්‍රථමයෙන්ම කිව්වා තමුන්නාන්සලා උදව් කරනවා සුදු රටවල් වලට. උදව් කරනවා දියුණු වෙච්ච රටවල් වලට. නමුත් නොදියුණු වෙච්ච රටවලට උදව් කිරීම යුතුයි කියලා ඒ කාලේ සභාපති හැරියට සිටපු බ්ලැක් මහත්තයාට මම කිව්වා. එදා ඉතින් ඒගොල්ලෝ තීරණයක් ගත්තා පුංචි රටවලට උදව් කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා.
वर्ष 2020 जनपति कौद
सोचा है तुमने कि चलते ही जाए तारों से आगे कोई दुनिया बसाए
भुला के तुमसे मिला हूँ निकली है दिल से दुआ रंग दे तुम मोहे गेरुआ अपना दिल तो आवारा ना जाने किस पे आएगा
16th of November is going to be the day that the people get the opportunity to elect a new president for our country. We are not seeing the current president running for a second term. We see 35 presidential candidates who are gunning for that position, the executive presidency of Sri Lanka. Now, we have 4 gentlemen here in our studio representing 4 presidential candidates. Surprisingly, Shehan Ranatunga, who is one of our journalists, has been absolutely silent today during the question round, Shehan. I think you better, Mr. Usripal and Mr. Jayakodi are, going to go head to head. Now, I want to start off where we stopped. Now, the main question that one could have is that, as Mr. De Silva also mentioned, this political culture has been negative to our country, negative to the youth, negative to various communities. And we are at this juncture here today. We are seeing various sorts of discriminations towards people. We've seen a past where, as you mentioned, the Tamils have been discriminated. We've seen even further back where the estate community has been discriminated. We are seeing a situation where various incidents are happening. And I want to draw this question to you, Mr. Jayakodi. Are we now seeing a similar trend with regard to the Muslim community as well? Are we now neglecting them to the extent that we might also look back in another 20 to 30 years and speak about this day and say, back then this is what these guys did? Is this what's happening? And you have to be responsible to a certain degree because you are now representing an NDF candidate who is also backed by the current government of our country, the United National Party.
The clear answer to your question is no, as far as the UNP NDF is concerned. That's exactly why we presented, our candidates signed 2 charters, Youth Charter and Women's Charter. Now, in the Youth Charter, I can say there are several points, 14 points, but the first point is diversity and social harmony. So, this document alone talks about holistic development, youth participation, poverty alleviation and social inclusion, education and skills development. All these things, all these pledges will be signed into law within 3 months into Mr. Premadasa's presidency. So, if Mr. Premadasa fails to adhere to his promises, to his pledges, as citizens, you all have the right to go to courts against him. So, this is the difference that the UNP wants to make this election. Now, you earlier talked about national security and Mr. Fonseca's appointment. I think national security is also a very important topic, and it has a direct correlation to the topic, the question you asked right now. it's not only about Mr. Fonseca. Yes, Mr. Fonseca will be the central piece in the defense establishment under the UNP. At the same time, we talk about a proper system that ensures national security in Sri Lanka, which includes National Security Council. It's not the current council which is convened at the sole discretion of the president, and anyone can just walk in. And it was revealed at the PSC hearings how the Security Council sessions took place. So a proper National Security Council, a proper national security strategy, a National Security Advisor, which is a new position that will be created under the UNP NDF government, and then financial intelligence and National Intelligence Act, which is very important to streamline the intelligence authorities working on various fronts, and Cyber Security Act. So all these elements will come into play under Mr. Premadasa's presidency. At the same time, there's a very important section in his election manifesto which talks about his war against extremism, so which is also a very important part in the UNP's campaign. He has already declared war on all forms of extremism and has pledged to fully implement the ICCPR Act, not in a selective manner, but to curtail all forms of extremist expressions and sentiments, and to make sure that Sri Lanka doesn't slide back into a dark era again. So that is very clear as far as the UNP is concerned.
Rasika, it's I don't know whether you'll agree with me. The restatement of the obvious, national security matters like this. The fact that our country, our politics has come to a situation where we have to continuously restate the obvious. We saw this in the 2015 presidential election as well, where presidential candidates had to come up on stage and say corruption is bad. Yes, we knew that. National security is important. Yes, we know that. Extremism is bad. Yes, we know that. The fact that even, I'm not just pointing this finger at the United National Party, even the Sri Lanka Freedom Party during the previous presidential election came forward and said, we ended the war, we ended the war. This ceaseless blabber of what they have achieved and restatement of the obvious has been our presidential motto, our presidential slogan for each of your camps. Not in your case, your candidate is new. But all of these candidates have come forward and said, restated the obvious. Isn't this a sad state of affairs? I'll draw this question to Dr. Abesing and to Mr. Tennakoon as well. Dr. Abesing, what do you think? The fact that everyone says the same thing over and over again, and we are looking at yet another presidential election.
Exactly. So this has happened over 70 years. People have been listening. They are coming and giving promises, and then they themselves forget the promises, and the public also forget the promises, and then they come again, and then they say that they are going to do this. So it's really good that now the DNF candidate is now coming up various mechanisms that people to believe what he is going to do and what he is not going to do, what others have done, how others have done. So I think it's the public that has to judge on what people are telling and what people have been done in the past, and then take a decision on the 16th of November, whether they are going to just keep on listening to these, the two major parties and identifying alternative for each other, or whether they really want a change.
Yep.
Right? So I think, so it's good that, we have a parliamentary elections coming in, so probably we can see that what DNF, if they win, going to do in 3 months. And this type of promises came in even 2015.
The 100-day government.
Yeah, 100 days work. And people expected them to do it, but it did not happen. And now we are coming for another election. So I think, for anyone in the country that really want a change, I think they need to think twice and see that how it's going to happen, and who is really going to bring the change. Now, even if Mr. Sajith Premadasa wins, his cabinet would be more or less same. And if Gotabaya Rajapaksa wins, the cabinet would be more or less same. So whether these two parties can bring the change, or will they bring the change, or whether we really need a different approach to the country and then different thinking and a new vision and a new team to take up the challenge. I think that decision will be taken on 16th of November, and everybody has the opportunity. So we believe that people will use that opportunity to at least to make this a landmark election in this country, and then going forward from here, and we change the system whenever we get an opportunity.
Mr. De Silva, from that, going to you, Dr. Abesinghe mentioned that if Gotabaya Rajapaksa comes in, same set of people will be in the cabinet. The NDF candidate Sajith Premadasa comes in, same set will be in the cabinet. Unfortunately for the both of you also, at least until the next election, it will be the same set of people in the cabinet.
No, unfortunately, I want to look at the whole thing in a new way. It is unfortunate that none of the, my colleagues mentioned about it. Basically, we have discussed this issue at length, and we know the problem in this country. Change alone won't make any difference at all. What we really want is, it's a democracy which needs to be democratized totally. Unless you democratize the whole thing, nothing will happen.
Yep.
And also, on the other hand, there is also another important thing that we need to mention. We have lost, politicians have lost their say. People don't respect what politicians, say. Similarly, politicians also don't seem to understand why they are not being respected or why they don't trust. People don't trust the politicians. Actually, what you need to do, things right. If you do the things right, only then you will be able to win the confidence of the masses. Actually, we have gone into it. And we have found, I think this is a very good start for all of us to start thinking. There is a recommendation by one of the professors who had gone into the whole thing. Even in the West, there is a problem that the democracies needs to be democratized. In our case, it is still greater. We are really on the brink. Really, unless we save this country, we are going to get into a terrible mess. Professor Giddens, he had written a book called The Third Way. None of my colleagues mentioned about the changes that needs to be done. Unfortunate situation is, in our case, we have looked into all that. It has to be a totally new thing. Third way is total democratization of the whole process, plus, creating conditions where a human being will be treated not the way that we have already treated all throughout the past 71 years. We have to look at the human beings and look at even fauna and flora, right? Our intention is always now to look at the whole thing in a new way, to give it a total new picture, to give it a total new start based on the teachings of Professor Giddens, which we have carefully studied. That is the only way where we will be able to change this whole country, not just by a simple change.
Mr. Usripal, a question has come in. I'm not going to mention the name of the person who has sent this text message, but I am going to read it out to you as it is. I am a victim of war. Tamils will not listen to TNA or other parties. They have better brains than these politicians. Can Main 2, Mr. Gota or Mr. Sajith show 50% of votes without North and East? Over to Mr. Tennako.
Yes. I think it's a very, very relevant and very important question for us to discuss in this forum, because the sentiments that is expressed by that person who has raised that question indicates the general thinking of the Tamil-speaking people today. They do not believe the TNA policies anymore. They do not rely on their promises anymore, because they have failed throughout the last 5-year period. I mean, forgetting the previous periods, they have been toeing the line of the government. They have been hand in glove with the government. They were part of the UNP virtually, but they failed to deliver what the Tamils suffering in the north and eastern wanted. Their economy has gone down to the most lowest precipice. There are areas in the north and the east, where they have not seen the color of their political leaders physically. That is the relationship that they have with their political leaders. And today, this paper in the Lanka today, it reports Immediately after Sampanthan announced that they are going to pledge the support to the UNP, there were women with slippers in the hand on the street. And it is the police that came and dispersed them. Today papers reported it. That is the sentiment that is prevailing in the north. And they are justified because there are people, no unemployment. Their resources are untapped. Their resources remain exposed to the nature. They are not exploited by the government anymore. There are no plans for that. They are always talking big. And we have a candidate coming from the UNP who is talking about the future as if he has fallen from the sky, having been part and parcel of a government which was in power for the last 5 years. The only question that we can ask is he going to be another person, a new person? In Pali there is a saying, Nacha so, nacha anyo. He is neither a Dalambua nor a Samanalaya. He is an in-between character. Where did he come from? Did he fall from the sky? He is promising all kinds of things. Whereas his leader, the leader of the party, the man who professes himself to become the Prime Minister and continue as the Prime Minister, even under Sajid Premadasa, he says that I am going to be the Prime Minister, and he has already declared economic policies for this country running up to 2025. So can Sajid Premadasa say that he is going to denounce all that and throw that to the waste paper basket? All this is jokes, I think. So therefore, the TNA members and the Tamil-speaking members, they are very much alert because they want to now teach a lesson to the communal-minded politicians who have been trying to divide this country for the sake of their survival, political survival, and their individual benefits.
We only have half an hour more, Shehan. Before we go into this, I think I should allow Rasika to respond to that strong statements made by Mr.
But I think the timing of the statement is also important because all these sentiments come after the ITAK pledged support to Mr. Premadasa, and even before that, when both parties were trying to lobby the TNA or Tamil political parties, the TNA was perfectly okay. I think that's the hypocrisy that we need to battle. But I think as far as the TNA is concerned, similar sentiments were expressed in 2015 also, when the TNA decided to back Mr. Maithripala Sirisena. At that point, Mr. Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam ran separately, but he managed to get, I think, close to 20,000 votes, if my memory serves me right. So TNA, there may be many flaws on the part of TNA, on the part of the TNA's politicians, but still, over the last 5 years, the current government has established the Office of Missing Persons, OMP. They have established the Office of Reparations, and they have made a commitment to establish the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So these topics are deeply relevant to the people in the north. So the issue of missing persons is a very relevant topic to most of them. So they know with the UNP and with the NDF, they can at least negotiate their concerns. They can at least have a discussion. Their sentiments or their aspirations will not be crushed by a military-style dictator. So that's why they are supporting.
Just one addition.
Yes.
We are saturated with commitments. There have been commitments. There are going to be commitments. It is happening every day. But we are waiting for happenings.
There is this interesting story, Deshan and Shehan, that I read recently. And if I'm able to recollect that story, they said power is a curious thing. There were a king, a priest, and a rich man, and a common sellsword. So the other two people requested the sellsword to actually end the life of two other people. And it was up to the sellsword to decide who was going to live and who was going to die. So again, power is a curious thing. Who is going to have the power on the 16th of November is going to be the problem. But keeping all of that in mind, as of right now, it looks like the people in the north and the east have the power to decide who the next president of our country is going to be. We are basing ourselves on or breaking ourselves into a racial demographic to look into who our president is going to be. We are going ahead and saying the Sinhala Buddhists will vote for A. The Catholics, Sinhala Tamil Christians will vote for B. The Tamils will vote for C. The Muslims will vote for D. So this situation, we are again breaking ourselves into political parties. 2 years ago, 5 years ago, we were UPFA, United National Party and the JVP. Now we are the SLPP Alliance, the NDF Alliance, the National People's Power Movement and the National People's Party. And now we are also Sinhalese, Buddhists, Tamils voting for each candidate. Shehan, I think you can take over from me, but where are we going?
I'm just simply adding to your opening remarks, Mr. Tennukun, about the UNP and all that happened under their terms in government in the north and the east and atrocities that occurred. But as Chaturanga said, it's ultimately about the presidential election and it's about the votes and about who's going to win this. If we just look back at 2015, ultimately it was a race between Maithripala Sirisena and Mahinda Rajapaksa. And despite all of that, Maithripala Sirisena won 74.4%, while Mahinda Rajapaksa only secured 21.8%. This time we're talking about Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
What is the election you are referring to?
2015 presidential election.
No, those figures are wrong.
I'm talking about the percentage in the Jaffna district.
Jaffna district.
Yeah,
Okay,
Jaffna
okay.
district.
Sorry. You
So
can
I'm just referring to Jaffna alone as an example.
I mistook it as the entire clipping.
So in that sense, now we have Gotabaya Rajapaksa up against Ajit Premadasa. What lessons have been learned, Mr. Tennukun, do you think? Because after all, you must admit that there is still a lot of fear in the north and the east about a return of a Rajapaksa regime. So in light of these numbers, how can they be sure that they can overturn these numbers and win the north and the east?
I think coming to the question of this fear psychosis that they have created, I have to ask one simple question. Did Gotabaya Rajapaksa or Mahinda Rajapaksa go and declare war in the north? Or were they pushed to a situation to suppress a war that has already been there, created during the UNP regime, sprung up during that period, prevailing, extending over Chandrika Kumaratunga and all these periods? When did it start? They were compelled to go and quell that situation, to suppress that situation. It has already sprung up. People talk as if Gotabaya Rajapaksa has gone and declared war to North. That is not what happened. The entire populace of this country suffered as a result of that internecine war that prevailed. You know, they killed people, they damaged property, they did all kinds of things, heinous things. So any government sitting in power will have to put a stop to that.
So now in the build-up
in that role, suppressing the war, there are certain acts that happens during a war. It is not what Gotabaya Rajapaksa went and perpetrated against the Tamils. He had to go and suppress these uprising, inhuman people who were killing people, who were killing priests, who were damaging properties, who were doing all kinds of damages to this country.
So are you satisfied with the communication? It seems that there's a problem with communication, Mr. Tennukun, in your opinion. And there has been a lot of activity up in the north and the east by the SLPP to communicate this message, as you're saying.
Yes.
But then what do you say to statement made by, for example, Mr. Vimal Veeravansa, that the Palali airport, the Jaffna airport will be renamed once Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa comes into power? Do you agree with this?
I don't know. I'm really, in my way of looking at politics, I don't look at those things as that important.
But don't you think that would affect the voters?
Yeah, I mean, if as much as possible, it is best to refrain ourselves from any statements that would lead to damage the feelings among the communities and, various parties. It is best to do that. But this happens in politics, they go and make statements of all kinds of statements. That happens. But it is not in the best interest of the cause that we are striving for to make such statements. Now, what is important is there is a serious lapse of communication and, there's a certain lapse there. Because with short possible time for the campaigning, they can't reach possibly everybody. But don't forget, there is a growing concern among the Tamil-speaking people who have been left out high and dry by the parties whom they elected to represent them. So that is the one that will manifest this time. This is the one that shows. Now that is why in the now this pledging the support itself by Sumantiram and ITAC, you know, we expected the entire TNA to come to 5 parties. Whereas in the Telo, one person is contesting as a Tamil candidate. If they are so communal minded, let the entire Jaffna Peninsula vote for that person. I mean, if it is the communal mind that is important. I mean, I would rather,
Mr.
I would rather call upon the Tamil people.
If you intervene for
if you are, no, just a minute. Let me conclude this. I mean, if they are so communal minded, as their party name suggests, they can support the Tamil candidate. Because he will fight for the cause of the Tamils than anyone else. But they seem to be having more faith in the UNP and Sajid Premadasa than their own candidate.
Mr. Tennakoon, can I think...
I think there's a very, very famous Sinhala saying that is very relevant. Dikirata balalot saki. So this is that scenario. That scenario, because he talked about people throwing slippers at Mr. Sumandiran's vehicle. Now they threw slippers at Mr. Sumandiran's vehicle because of the people who were allegedly abducted during the time of Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa. That was their concern.
But I come up with a different idiom. It's as if you're saying Miditittai. Is it because the TNA is now supporting the NDF that you're saying all of this?
No, it is very sweet. What is happening and what is being done by the TNA is really good for Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
How so?
Because it shows a division among them. It also shows how Gotabaya Rajapaksa will stand without committing itself to these divisional political things, even on the eve of an election. He would rather stand direct and tell the people, I am not for this. To divide the country, to have a different rule. He stands for one country, one rule. That is a very firm statement. That is what we want. We don't want vacillating people who tell one thing in the north, one thing in the south, and they have agreement secretly, but tell the public we don't have any agreement. Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa doesn't have to say any of those things because he doesn't believe in those agreements. He doesn't believe in such commitments. He is a person who has been working for the last 1.5 years among all the candidates aspiring this time to become presidential candidates. He is the one person whom we know who has been working to prepare a policy plan during the last 1.5 years, committed to that. He is not a person who comes on stage and say, I am going to do this, I am going to do this, I am going to give pads, this, that, cricket bats and all kinds of things. All jokes.
I don't agree with this. Actually, now Rohan Pallevat, I must give credit to him, right? He had been there. We have been supporting him because we thought that was the place. Unfortunately, I realized I wanted something more vigorous and something, even more. We had to look into the whole thing in a deeper, deeply. Unfortunately, all that didn't happen. Rohan Pallevat is the one who started first with it's a superb manifesto.
His name came up very much late.
No, that was about
by the time, excuse me, by the time Gotabaya Rajapaksa had already put in place 21 committees. I had the unfortunate the sort of chance of me sitting in one or two of those committees. I saw how seriously they were working. I saw how seriously those committees were represented. They were discussing the subjects at length and they prepared reports and they are ready with those things. Whereas Sajid Premadasa comes up, he was fighting for about 6 months to get the presidency. He was not talking of policies. Suddenly he comes on stage and he keeps on telling, I will do that, I will do this, I will give this. Can we believe all this nonsense?
Mr. Tennakoon, I think we have to give the equal opportunity to the other two gentlemen as well.
Agree.
But I want to ask you this question. When when the party that fielded Gotabaya Rajapaksa decided to field Gotabaya Rajapaksa, it was the Rajapaksas that decided that.
Yes.
when there was a court case filed by two civil society activists, it was the Rajapaksa family that decided to get Chamal Rajapaksa to hand in nominations. The Rajapaksas are deciding everything. The Rajapaksas are fielding their candidates, their family members, and the main argument is going to be Rajapaksa President, Rajapaksa Prime Minister, Rajapaksa Finance Minister, Rajapaksa Speaker, and Rajapaksa probably Youth Minister or something of that sort. A group of Rajapaksas deciding. Is that what the country wants?
I don't think that's what the country wants. But that is not what is going to happen also. But that is what we are imagining might happen.
But how can you be so
the
sure?
thing is this. When a new party was formed as a breakaway group, there is no secret. It is the Rajapaksas. It is one of the Rajapaksas who took the lead to do that. You know, bringing up a new party in this country in such a short time and making that party to contest an island-wide largest election and get the highest number of votes in such a short time is a marvelous thing. And they are a set of people who were defeated by the people in this country. But in a very short time, now see the local government election, 5 million votes as against the 3 million votes taken by the UNP. So isn't that a miraculous thing? They worked hard. So it is the there is no secret. Rajapaksas led that cause. So therefore people think that it is the Rajapaksas who decide. In fact, if Rajapaksas are sitting as president, secretary, treasurer or anybody, it is they who will decide. But the party, as a party, they have supported. That is reflected in the results, election results. In the local government results, just look at it. Just look at it.
Yes.
5 million votes.
Yeah.
That is without the SLP vote.
Yes, Mr. Disil.
Actually, building up a party is not an easy thing. We have gone through and we are struggling so hard.
Yeah.
Fortunately, they had a lot of money with them, you know. I don't know how they got all that money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the problem in a country where you have so many parties, it is very difficult to even send the message across to the masses. Even if you are genuinely interested in making a change, like what I told you, creating something new, the third way, you know, now, which will definitely help the country, because we have to look at the country totally new. We have to look at everything correctly, and our approach needs to be totally genuine, totally committed. The biggest problem is if you have a party, you know, you can really go to the masses if you have the money. Unfortunately, we are struggling so hard. We have to spend so much of money, and we are really short of funds, you know. But they were lucky to, you know, go to the people and win the elections because they had a lot of money.
Yeah.
That is not the criteria. You know, people, now, how did this party system become so corrupt? Actually, that again, the blame should go to the UNP, right? Unfortunately, they have created such a mess in the whole system, having created or having paved the way to, you know, we have 71 odd parties, right? 70 odd parties, I can't remember. The biggest problem, all these communal, you know, religious type of parties, I think the start was basically after this proportional representation system was introduced.
Yes.
Now you have to look at all that completely new. If you don't do that, I don't think any one of these old parties will be able to change the country. We are looking at the whole thing totally new. We have no baggages. We are prepared to go even do anything to change all that, because unless you change all that, you will never be able to change the political culture that is there in this country. This is my, you know.
In that light, Mr. Jayakodi, if you would you like to?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to intervene. I mean, it's really, I mean, I should thank Mr. Tennako that to bringing up all the issues that which are related to this political culture of 70 years. So I think, I mean, we don't need to talk even really, because viewers can understand what's going on here, what facts which came. Really, these are the things that really which we really wanted to go for a different path. So, and we thought that it's not that changing the people, you know, bring the solutions to the problems of the country. So we thought that, you know, we need a set of policies and strategies just like in other developed countries, because I mean, other developed countries have policies and strategies. When the government comes, those don't change.
Yeah.
They just follow what the country has. So similarly, so that's why we really built up these policies and strategies, and then we will not really, no point discussing about the past, right? So now these 70 years has gone. These two camps ruled the country more than 35 years each, right? So it's now everybody needs a change. So if we really need a change, now we need to look for who really can change and what policies and strategies that these, we know that 3 main candidates in the contest. So, we know that Mr. Mahesh Senanayake is also contesting, but it's obvious that the 3 candidates are really prominent in the election. So people can take a decision. And then we really are for a change. And then I'm sure we don't have much policy and strategy difference between Mr. Mahesh Senanayake and in our camp. Only what they see is the difference as that we have JVP inside our camp. So that's the reason. So, but that's a fact. But we know that last 30 years, there is no really a bad mark for JVP in the parliament. So, and then what they were doing, people appreciated. So we know that we are in a situation that now people have a choice. So probably that what we really brought up in this discussion, that itself people can take a decision. So I believe that people will take that decision.
Small interruption.
Time is very, very important right now.
Comrade Doctor, old wine can come in new bottles and appear as a new product. That is what the UNP is trying to do.
No, I should respond to his statement on this new political parties representing the new aspiration. JVP has suddenly become the darling of everyone who wants change. But in the 2015 election, JVP presented a national list that is full of professionals, university lecturers, and all kinds of like top people, top professionals. But in the end, the JVP got 3 national list slots. None of them were appointed. The same thing is going to happen to these professionals who are now rallied behind the JVP. The moment they have power.
Fairness to JVP, the role they have played in the COPE committee and other places.
That's true. That's true. I admit that. They did a commendable job.
Highly commendable
job. That is true. But still, fundamentally, but the people were
Thank you, Mr. Tennakon. I think really, thank you, Rasika. But I need to respond to you. Right? See,
very quick,
that was JVP. That was JVP. What they did in 2015. So maybe that people have different views on that. But at that election, so if we did not have, they did not take that decision, the things they would have done in the parliament would have been different, right?
But it could have been a lot better if Mr. Mayadune was there.
Mr. Mayadune resigned.
That's a different issue.
His contribution was there throughout.
We have to...
no, he is still with us, right? He is still with us, so there is no difference. There is no difference if he was there. But what I am saying is that, this time NPP, National People's Power, is a coalition. And all 30 organizations in the NPP has equal opportunity.
Yes.
We have a steering committee, 3 members from each organization. We have an operational committee, 1 member from each all 30 organizations. So I think that now the framework, the strategies are different.
Yes.
And I am sure that this time you all know that there will be a second count. Right?
There could be
none of these major parties will not get 50%. Right? So we will see how it goes. And then certainly we can plan for the parliamentary election. And then we will see that how the representation from this so-called third post.
Gentlemen,
and see how the things will change.
From there, we have to go into a short commercial break. Time is of the essence right now, and I have to allow the chance for these 4 gentlemen for their concluding remarks as well. We'll be back after this short commercial break.
වර්ෂයේ 1997 දූෂණයෙන් භීෂණයෙන් තොර සාමකාමී සමෘද්ධිමත් රටක්.
ජනතාව වෙනුවෙන් ජනතාවගේ පොදු ජනතාවගේ පැත්තේ හිතලා දේශීය ආරක්ෂාව ගැන හිතලා අපේ රටේ ආරක්ෂාව, භූමියේ ආරක්ෂාව, අපේ දේශීයත්වයේ සහ ලාංකික විශේෂ අනන්‍යතාවය ආරක්ෂා කිරීම සඳහා අපි විශාල වැඩ පිළිසක් නිර්මාණය කරලා ක්‍රියාත්මක
වර්ෂ 2020 ජනපති කවුද?
ගස්සන දඟ මල්ලට හිත දෙනවද සලකාලා
අලුත්ම සින්දු බලන්න.
නෑ නෑ අහන්න.
TikTok videos අහන්න.
TikTok videos බලන්න.
birthday wishes බලන්න.
අයියෝ ගයාන් birthday wishes කියන්න.
හරි මේ ඔක්කොම දඟරල්ලන්නේ. දඟරල්ල බලන්න.
Welcome back. We are in the final round of Face Nation. We have 4 gentlemen here in the studio firing 3 rounds. We've had thus far, and I have to thank my colleagues from Newsfirst, Shehan and Deshan as well, for keeping us entertained during this Face Nation program. So, as the final round, gentlemen, I have to apologize and ask you to keep it to the time frame as much as possible. I want to start off with Dr. Abe Singh and talk to you. This is the final round. We have a conclusion, time for conclusions. Why should the people vote for Anur Kumara Dissanayake?
Chaturanga, that I mean, as I've been telling, I mean, this country, after 70 years, we need to now think of our future. It's not really my future or even my children's, my grandchildren's future. So we need to go straight from here, and we have to develop this country. We need to build up our economy. We need to, correct our education, health, agriculture. So even if you mention any area that we need a change at this moment. So this country really can't go from here if we not try to change. So I think this is the very good opportunity for public of this country to rethink about what they have been doing in the past. And in the past, when one party did not work properly, they were selecting the other party. So this time they will have really a new way to look at, and we believe that people of this country, the voters, will vote for Kampas and Anur Kumara Dissanayake, and then and really bring a change to this country, and we will continue with this change, and we will really make a good representation in the parliament, and I am sure that this will be the landmark election in this country.
Thank you, Dr. Abe Singh, for your concluding remarks. I want to now quickly move on to Mr. Lasil de Silva and ask you also the same question, but I also want to ask you this. You have been a serious figure when it comes to tackling corruption in our country. You were vested with the Press Effect as well, and with all of that coming into play, we've heard on the political arena from here and there, corruption. You have been a person who stood against it. You have been a person who was in a presidential commission. You are saying you have a new candidate, but that candidate is not going to be enough to make that change that you say that is required by the country. What is going to be your plan?
We have carefully selected him, and I know he is the best candidate among all the 4 major candidates, because we have a threat of security, and there are others who have gone into all the other areas, maybe finances, transport, all that. Unfortunate situation is, in this country, people talk about a change.
Yep.
Actually, we want something more than a change. We don't simply talk about a change. We want to make it happen. Like what you said, there were promises given. None of the promises were fulfilled. Unfortunate, the biggest problem in this country, the culture of impunity. No one is prepared to punish any one of those other candidates or friends in the political arena. Our situation is, we have no friends, no enemies. We love the country, we want these changes, and we want to give it a real start. Unless we do that, there is no one who could do that, because all the four candidates, right, out of, when you consider the four candidates, 3 of them have been there. At least even the JVP in their own style, the Neo is now a new face. I personally believe, I have spoken with them also, whether we could form an alliance against corruption, but unfortunately none of those things have succeeded. So we are strong enough, we will stand all alone, and we have the confidence that we will be able to do it, and we are sure we will be able to get to a number of, to a place where the general public at the moment don't even imagine. There are heaps and heaps of people coming behind us, and we are sure we can really create an impact, continue with it, go to Parliament and make all the changes.
Thank you, Mr. De Silva, for those remarks. I want to now move on to Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon, Municipal Councillor, the Colombo Municipal Council, representing the Sri Lanka Freedom Party. Mr. Tennakon, I got a second text message from the same person who texted earlier and said Mr. Rusiripala Tennakon has evaded the question. Can your presidential candidate of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna win the presidency without the support of the North and the East?
Yeah. I think I would briefly answer that question, but then I would briefly now, to conclude my concluding remarks, I'll be very brief. This country needs a course correction in our economic program. This country needs a perfect addressing of the national security. It's in danger. We have seen what has happened. This country needs a perfectly new addressing on the sovereignty of the country, because we see so many agreements, so many intrusions into the sovereignty of this country by way of economic addressing, by way of other approaches. Therefore, those things have to be addressed. Then finally, we need a development program to be effectively implemented in this country. We need people with proven abilities, at least for a short period. If they have proven that they have done something during their short spell of time, they have maintained certain things, we have to look up to them, because we have to undo certain things that have gone astray. Now, finally, in a very broad sense, about the survival of our future survival in the global scenario, we have to be mindful of the regional concept. The BRI initiative that is taking place very strongly in this region is a thing that has to be addressed by political leaders. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is one person whom I am personally aware has addressed all these issues in forums, very eminent forums, and found correct approaches in all these directions. With regard to the question of getting the TNA support, I must say, there is no necessity for somebody to go and ask for their support. The Tamil-speaking people today are lined up to stand against the traditional Tamil parties that they were represented by them. They representing them, to break away from them and to have a change. So the only alternative possible is Gotabaya Rajapaksa.
Thank you, Mr. Tennakon, for your concluding remarks. Finally, Mr. Jayakodi, we are looking at a situation where the NDF presidential candidate, Sajith Premadasa, is going on making various promises that even the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna party has also, to a certain degree, raised concerns with and made a joke out of it, to be very fair with you. Are you all doing the campaign right?
Yes, I mean, Mr. Premadasa has given the best answer to that. He has signed these charters. He has made a commitment to sign these documents into law within 3 months after his presidency, and that should allay all your fears, because these documents will be legally valid documents. These are not mere election promises. Now, with regard to the TNS support and the support of Tamil political parties, a lot of parties are trying to whip up communal sentiments. A lot of parties are trying to stir up, racist inclinations in the south. But we have to reiterate that there's no secret agreement with any Tamil political party. There's no open agreement either. But we are ready to work with them to address the issues concerning the people in the north. We are ready to negotiate with the people. We are ready to engage with them. We are not going to crush their democratic rights. They can throw slippers at us, but still we'll preserve their right to do so. And that's the defining characteristic of the NDF campaign. So this election is a very decisive point in our history. This election will decide whether Sri Lanka will remain a democratic society, democratic country, a country where there is freedom of expression, freedom to do politics, freedom to hold dissenting and diverse opinions. So this election, make it a point to make sure that Sri Lanka continues to be a democratic, vibrant, democratic country with a proud democratic tradition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rasika Jayakodi, for joining us this evening and expressing your views regarding the presidential election and the NDF presidential candidate. Thank you, Dr. Nihal Abesinghe, the Secretary of the National People's Power Movement, for joining us this evening and talking to us about Anukumara Dissanayake and the plans of the NPP. Thank you very much, Mr. Lasil De Silva, for joining us this evening and talking about presidential candidate General Mahesh Senanayake. And of course, thank you, Mr. Rusiripala Tennakone, for joining us this evening and talking to us about Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the campaign around the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna. Again, thank you, gentlemen, Deshan and Shehan, for being here with us this evening and talking and bringing your questions to the floor as well. And your values, your viewpoints are always important for this show's success. I want to leave you rather with a quote that I found on the internet. Politics is not a science based on logic. They are the capacity of always choosing at each instant in constantly changing situations. The least harmful, the most useful. Who is the least harmful? Who is the most useful? Is up to you to decide on the 16th of November. So make sure you cast your vote correctly, and make sure that your vote counts. Thank you very much for watching Face the Nation this evening. I've been Chaturanga Pawarachi. We'll join you next week as well with an interesting panel such as today.